Congo, Congo nde mboka, mboka ngo mokengeli koi, mboka ngo mokengeli leopard. Mikolo tosekanaki na mosolo ya mboka Congo ekoki, tofungwani miso lelo, tomoni bozoba nyonso tosali po ya kobongisa Congo aveni. Ebongi tosala moto nyonso ata mwana. Congo ya mosolo mpembe ya nzoku, Congo ya bwanya kasa ya mbila, Congo ya makasi moto ya nkoi. Tosekanaki na mosolo ya mboka Congo.
Bandeko balandi émission na biso ya carte sur table, mbote mingi na biso ndenge tokutani lisusu na poko ya lelo. Na poko ya lelo tokoyamba mopaya monene oyo tozalaka na ye mbala na mbala, oyo mingi asololaka makambo ya mboka, oyo pe asakena na mboka na biso Congo. Ye azali mokonzi awa na mboka oyo, azali parlementaire MP na parti travailliste oyo tobengi na lokota ya anglais Labour Party. Na plateau awa tozali na bandeko mususu pe bakoyoka bakoposa pe mwa mituna na bango oyo pe bazali bandeko na biso tozalaka na bango mingi bokoyeba bango. Tokobanda nanu na mopaya na biso oyo tobeleli na kombo ya Jeremy Corbyn, topesi mbote na lokota na bango nde tolandi. Good evening, Mr. Jeremy.
Good evening.
Happy to see you again once more in this podium. The Congolese people are wondering about the situation back home in Congo. You have been an observer during the election in 2006. So what are your views now compared to before when you went there for the elections?
I went to Congo after the elections as well, on a later visit, and I went to Goma and then to Kinshasa, and I observed the situation in the east, which was then poor and is now, as far as I can see, much worse, with serious abuses of human rights, particularly women's rights there, and I have concerns whether the government is actually in control of the whole country or not.
About the situation, the human right in Congo, when you went there about the elections, you said that you promised to the Congolese people they're going to get a new democracy. Can we say that there is a democratic republic in Congo?
I don't think you can call a society democratic when a large number of people are not able to exercise normal life. Large numbers are forced to live in refugee camps, and their only security is the presence of the United Nations military force in order to try to protect them, because there have been problems about the behaviour of the Congolese army, behaviour of the militia groups, and behaviour of insurgent groups in the east. That's in the east. And there are also still very large numbers of people that have sought refuge in Kinshasa from all parts of the country, and so a functioning democracy requires people to be able to live in a functioning way.
Let's talk about Joseph, as Congolese call him, Joseph Kanambe Kabanji, so-called Kabila. You did support him. The whole international community did support him.
Hang on, let's not be personal about this. I didn't personally support anybody. Yeah. I'm a member of the British Parliament and I was on a delegation to observe the elections. I have not given personal support to anybody.
Okay.
But it is true to say that the British government has given a lot of support to the government led by Kabila, and has put a lot of resources in for training in the army, as well as various other projects, and indeed a lot of the international community has done that. That is true.
Let's start this again. The British government did support Joseph. They put all the resources to make this country just look like all civilized country in the world. But unfortunately, we can see that there is a mess. We don't even know how to call it right now, because Congo has become like a jungle. The Congo we used to know is not the same. Right now, what the British government is thinking about Joseph?
Well, they want to recognise the government of Congo, and they do. They want to give support to the people of Congo, and they do. I'm not the Foreign Secretary, I'm not the government, but it's very obvious to me that the government does not control the whole country, does not run all the services, and therefore one questions whether or not there is really functioning government over the whole country. My observations on my 2 visits is that there is not. Now, I am, as I say, that is an observation on relatively brief visits, but the numbers of people that have come to us through the all-party African Great Lakes group to talk about issues of human rights abuse and other things give me a lot of cause for concern.
We talked about the UN in Kinshasa, in Congo. Let's see, they call it MONUC. MONUC is the mission, the mission in Congo. Normally, the task they've been given was to protect the civilians and their goods, but we have noticed that MONUC didn't protect the civilians people, mostly in the east of the country. We saw the images, the pictures that people have been killed just under the noses of the MONUC. What could you say about this?
Well, I'm shocked by this, because MONUC was sent to the Congo in order to support a transition to democracy, in order to protect people from irregular forces and militia groups, and they've had a huge amount of money spent on them. It's the biggest UN mission, the longest serving UN mission. It's an incredibly expensive mission. President Kabila now wants them to leave ahead of the election in the Congo, and his view is that there's no longer any need for them to be there. They have had a very mixed record, because the abuse of human rights, wholesale rape, disappearances and killings have gone on in the east. They have had literally fights with the Congolese army, and it seems to me that the only people that are secure and doing well in the Congo are the mining companies.
You said about Kabila, Joseph Kanambe, asking MONUC to leave the country. Can you guess, or maybe in the Foreign Office, have you any idea of the reasons why he wants the MONUC to leave?
Well, the reasons he gives are that they're no longer needed and that the Congolese army can control things. I suspect it's more complicated than that. And whilst I do have very serious criticisms of MONUC for its behaviour, there are also serious questions about the abuse of power by the Congolese army against civilians in the east, and the way in which MONUC has tried to control what the Congolese army does. And so I suspect, to some extent, the government of Kabila wants to get rid of MONUC in order that this criticism is stopped.
So now, MONUC has to leave as Joseph is asking them to do so. Should they go or should they stay?
It's impossible for the UN to stay in a country if the government in the country concerned does not permit it to be there. And that would be a great difficulty. Whether or not President Kabila is prepared to negotiate that, I don't know. I can't give an answer to that, but I think it's hard to see how they could stay if the government of the Congo asked them to go.
What about the safety of the population if MONUC does leave the country?
I agree. My observation is that MONUC has a very mixed record on its behaviour and some of the complaints that have been made about it and its efficiency. yes, there are questions. But there are also even bigger questions about the safety of the civilian population in the east, where a combination of the Congolese army, several different militia groups, have all, at one time or the other, committed the most gross violations of human rights of the population of the area, including particularly the women.
Jeremy, we have seen about the Congo since this government came in power, just even a few times before. About nearly more than 700 million people died already, but no one, really no one, has called for the genocide in Congo. Why this?
There is a genocide in Congo. Nobody wanna talk about it. Hotel Rwanda, yeah.
What happened to Congo?
What happened to Congo? Oh,
Wasn't that Hotel Rwanda?
yeah. What happened to Congo? Oh,
Wasn't that the Holocaust?
yeah.
We just want a free blood and diamond gold in Africa and Congo.
Whoa.
Just want a free blood and diamond gold in Africa and Congo.
I see my people suffering
Oh yeah, yeah.
because of diamond gold.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Genocide in Congo seems like nobody can. I see my people suffering because of diamond gold.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Genocide in Congo seems like nobody can. Fathers die, mothers die, children cry, nobody to rescue. Fathers die, mothers die, and many die, more than the 6 million, but never ever hear it mentioned. Oh, yeah.
Genocide in Congo.
Whoa.
Genocide in Congo.
Yeah, yeah.
Genocide in Congo. Genocide in Congo. It seems like nobody cares.
Like nobody cares.
Genocide in Congo. Nobody wanna talk about it.
Kuna muikivu koma bakolela, mana basila nyoso na genocide. Kuna muituri ya kolela papa, mana basila nyoso na genocide. Bakenda kikela singo na tonga, ekoma na pokwa ngomba zongite. Na tuni epai na kolela. Soka basila nyoso na genocide di Congo.
Genocide in Congo. Genocide in Congo. Genocide in Congo. Genocide in Congo. Seems like nobody cares.
Like nobody cares.
Genocide in Congo. Nobody wanna talk about it.
More than 1,000 people die every day. Begging for diamond and gold. How can you people be so cold? I see the bloody shed every day. They for no mercy for no one. They give them no justification. They for no mercy for no one. They even kill the pregnant women. In 2010, 10 million of Congolese may die 'cause nobody cares.
Congo.
Oh,
Genocide in Congo.
you and the one that you wanna talk about. Genocide in
Genocide in
Congo.
Congo.
The numbers who've died in the Congo have been greater than the deaths in some countries in the First and Second World War. It's absolutely appalling what has happened, and the international media have either not reported or not understood it. So you want to deal with that first? So we then need to move on from that. What do you do about the violators of human rights? Because they are there in the army and the militia.
Just a question about this, what do you call it, this measure of injustice. Jean-Pierre Bemba was arrested and accused of war crime in Central Africa. But now we got people like Bosco Tangana. We got Kunda Batwai, who has been housed by the Monique for a few times, you know that. We got the people in power right now, like Paul Kagame, Joseph Kabila, Yuri Museveni. Is the Monique, no, the UN, is the UN gonna make an investigation about the role in this massacre in Congo?
Procureur Moreno, dire les droits, rien que les droits. Michonoka, la naissance de Jean-Pierre Bemba. Ces fausses accusations montées de toutes pièces par le procureur de la CPI contre les sénateurs congolais, nous relevons plusieurs contradictions de dates, de faits imprécis, ainsi que des chefs d'accusation vagues. Le soutien des Congolais au sénateur Bemba embarrasse la CPI et les ennemis de la grande République démocratique du Congo.
Jean-Pierre Bemba innocent, il n'a pas pillé, il n'a pas violé, il n'a pas tué. Jean-Pierre Bemba innocent, il n'a pas pillé, il n'a pas violé, en RCA.
Bemba n'a jamais été en RCA, n'était pas le chef militaire à la tête de ses troupes, mais c'est l'ancien président centrafricain Patassé qui donnait les ordres relatifs aux opérations militaires et fixait les cibles sur le terrain. Comment Patassé peut se trouver d'ailleurs Jean-Pierre Bemba au gel de la CPI?
Jean-Pierre Bemba innocent, il n'a pas pillé, il n'a pas violé, il n'a pas tué. Jean-Pierre Bemba innocent, il n'a pas pillé, il n'a pas violé, en RCA.
Depuis sa création, la CPI fait l'objet de nombreuses critiques et son travail est jugé improductif, politisé, mené de manière incompétente. Rendre la justice et punir les coupables de crimes et de guerre, c'est bon, mais la CPI doit adopter une politique appropriée pour son avenir, sinon elle sera fermée comme Guantanamo.
Jean-Pierre Bemba innocent, il n'a pas pillé, il n'a pas violé, il n'a pas tué. Jean-Pierre Bemba innocent, il n'a pas pillé, il n'a pas violé, en RCA.
La Bible dit invoque-moi au jour de ta détresse et je te délivrerai, tu me glorifieras. Rendons grâce à Dieu et restons en prière afin que ce processus qui a commencé avec le sénateur Jean-Pierre Bemba soit juste, équitable et signe de la délivrance proche de la grande République démocratique du Congo.
Jean-Pierre Bemba innocent, il n'a pas pillé,
I'm not speaking for the government here. My own view is there has to be an investigation as to what's happened, because the vast numbers of wholly innocent civilians that have died, the number of people who've been uprooted and displaced, the number of women that have been raped and violated in the East is horrendous. By any standards, it's horrendous. There has to be investigations into it.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. I don't know if we can take one or two questions from the audience, and then we get back to the second part of our interview. We're going to go to our friend Laurent Bango, who is one of the leaders in the Congolese community. He's representing one of the political party. And then if he has got a question, we're going to be glad to hear that. Thank you. Mr. Laurent.
You are MP for Labour Party. And the Labour Party is in power from 1997 to now. And if you see, from that time to now, all the situation is going in Congo. And again, maybe if I forgot, you are a member in human rights for the world. From your views, what was your report in international for the situation, what is going on in Congo?
Well, the British government doesn't run the Congo, let's be clear about that. We are a part of the UN and so on, and the British government has given quite a lot of aid to the Congo, but the British government is not the government of the Congo. On the question of human rights abuses, what has happened is appalling. The number of people that have been killed is of First World War proportions, and the violations that continue are disgusting and disgraceful. And I think that all the governments of the world have got to be much tougher on investigating, as I said to our colleague, investigating what has happened in the Congo, and if necessary, people must be brought before the International Criminal Court. Others have been brought before the International Criminal Court from former Yugoslavia. I don't have a problem with that. I think the same thing must apply.
I don't know if you... My question, a big question, you as a member for international, what was your report? Because you went to Congo and you are MP.
I went and observed the elections, and the actual electoral process of people voting, counting and so on was what I observed in Bas-Congo and in Kinshasa. I later went on a second delegation paid for by Save the Children Fund and Christian Aid, but not particularly on their behalf. They supported the delegation, and our purpose was to look at the question of particularly the treatment of women and human rights violations in the East, and we reported back that we were deeply concerned about it. Far more action had to be taken, and far more support given to the women's organisations and other organisations there, and we put pressure on the British government to do that.
Sikoyo tokozwa motuna mosusu epa ndeko na biso tozali na yawa Capitaine Lion oyo bandeko mingi bayebi na kombo ya géant azali membre ya DCUK oyo pe azali moko ya bato batelemelaka mboka na bwania na makambo mingi. En tout cas, Capitaine Lion, mbote ndeko Jeremy azawana olobi.
Mbote mingi Papa Jean Kikamba, and I'm thank you very much, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn. And I think I have just one question to ask you about the situation that happened in Congo. Because I'm very glad, because you know about Congo. You are one of the specialists about the Great Lake countries in Central Africa, like Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, wherever. And not my worry, but our Congolese. The worry is what? Because I'm taking the opportunity for me now to ask you one question. Because you went to Congo twice. You went first time during the election as observer, and then you went back for the second time after the election to find exactly what's going on. But when you went to the Congo for the first time, you see a Congolese community, particularly in England, but I can't say for other countries in Europe, whoever, just to say about England, we've been very, very worried to see the actual president, we call him Police Kanambe, Joseph, we see him as a president, as elected, as a candidate for the presidency back to stay.
I don't choose the government of the Congo. I don't decide who the candidates for an election are. It's not my job to do that. I'm a member of the British Parliament. It's not the job of the British, French, United States or any other government to do that. That has got to be a decision made in the Congo. That is what independence was fought for, and that's why it was achieved. Were the elections fair? I only observed the voting process, as I said, in two areas. I didn't have any complaints about the actual voting process in the sense that people went, were registered, and they cast their votes. And I observed the counting at a number of places. What concerned me was the amount of money spent by the two main candidates in the election compared to the amount of money spent by all the other candidates was very large indeed. And also the level of access to the media and so on. Was that reasonable? Was that fair? I'm not sure. The next election, I'm not certain of the constitutional position about the current president running for election again. I think I'm right in saying that would require a constitutional change to allow for a further term. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But I would be concerned about an electoral process taking place when there are so many displaced people, there are so many people still in camps, there are so many people who are unable to move freely about and frightened, particularly in the east. I think the situation for security and safety for people is really the big priority, and that's why the whole issue of the future of monarch in the Congo is something that's actually very important. And I want the rest of the world, including China, to be engaged in that. At the moment, there is an assumption that by supporting the current government in the Congo, that things are going to improve. Getting rid of monarch doesn't necessarily mean that the problems that monarch were brought in to deal with have been solved, because I don't believe they have.
Thank you, Jeremy. Talking about the elections, because Captain Lyon, Lejean, talked about the election back in 2006. Now we're going to 2011. Likely, Britain has got elections coming in a week time.
In 2010.
2010, thanks.
6 days.
Time.
6 days' time.
Yeah, okay. Now, there are too many Congolese who have become British here in the UK. So, if they had to vote for, what could you tell them? What could they expect from the Labour Party, even from their families back home and for themselves back here?
I welcome the fact that large numbers of Congolese people have now obtained British nationality and are therefore able to vote in the election. I'm really pleased about that, and I really do support the Congolese community and admire the community work that's done within London particularly, because I think that's very good. And I think that we need to give more support to the community and community organisations for youth work, for advice, issues surrounding housing, education, and the self-presentation of the community. I think that's important. So I'm looking at community facilities, those kind of things. The issues in this election are usually about domestic policies, and the election, insofar as it's been dominated by anybody, has been dominated about the economic situation. There are some things the Labour government has done in the past 12 years that I'm very pleased about. One, expansion of nursery and preschool education, Sure Start, children's centres, and the rebuilding of secondary schools. More money for schools, more money for teachers, more money for teaching assistants, more money for equipment. So the education system has improved a great deal. Likewise, we've put a huge amount of money into the National Health Service, and so that cancer treatment is very good. Everyone gets a diagnosis within a fortnight and treatment as necessary. That's saving lives, life expectancy has improved, infant mortality has got lower. All those things are good. We are in an economic difficulty. In my view, a cut in public expenditure would be absolutely the wrong thing to do. If we follow David Cameron's advice and make 40,000 public employees redundant, not only do those 40,000 lose their jobs, their spending power goes down, we have to pay out benefits instead of receiving in tax, all of us, and we make the recession worse. That is the choice before people. I am very committed to representing my inner city community in London. I'm very proud of my community. There are people from probably 70 or 80 different countries living in my constituency. There are people of every different faith, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, agnostic, humanist, everything is there. And generally speaking, the community relations are quite good. But if the next government, after the election next week, cannot provide jobs, education, hope and opportunity for young people leaving school, then we're in for real problems in the future. That's why I'm very committed to maintaining a high level of public spending to provide that education and ensure those young people get jobs. I represented my area during the 1980s when unemployment went up to 20%. A lot of people lost their jobs. It was a period of hopelessness. I want this election to be about hope and about communities, and I admire the sense of family and strength and community that is there within the Congolese community, and it's a pleasure to represent a very substantial Congolese community in Parliament, and from them to be educated in the history and the injustices of history towards the Congo.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Have you got anything you wish to say but we didn't just talk about? You want to tell the Congolese community?
Thank you for all you do. Thank you for the spirit in which you do it to the community. And if I have a general message, is that I find international affairs fascinating. I find community affairs fascinating. And if we can teach anything to our children, it is an understanding of history. Why are the borders of the Congo the way they are? Are our children taught about the Congress of Berlin? Are our children taught about the slave trade? Are our children taught about the grab of resources from not just Congo, but from Africa as a whole? If our children can grow up with an understanding of historical processes, they'll be better educated, better citizens, and have a better understanding for the future. Teach the children history.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy, and we all wish you good luck to the election.
Thank you.
I know that you got a safe constituency.
There's no such thing as a safe constituency. You have to work for it.
But we'll do our best to support you and then continue to support you.
Thank you very much. And I will say that in the next Parliament, if I'm re-elected, we will reform the African Great Lakes group. We hope so. And I will be a member of that group, and I will also be visiting the Congo again in the very near future. And I will, as I've always done, be more than happy to come and talk to you about it and report back to the community, because I'm your delegate.
Thanks very much for your comment.
Carte sur table oyo ezali kosalema na Uk-Congo Voice na collaboration ya GGK Connections UK. Tranche oyo ya rétrospective de la semaine ekobanda kopesa biso ba information ya mboka na biso Congo. Ya liboso Monsieur Alan Dos oyo azalaki mokonzi ya Monique kuna epai na biso na Congo, auti kotika mosala pe asengaki na bandeko nyonso bande kosala na bango pe na gouvernement ete akozonga na mboka na ye Grande-Bretagne po ete auti kosala 44 ans ya misala kati na ONU et na kati ya 44 ans wana 10 ans mobimba pona makambo oyo etali kimia to la paix et la sécurité kati na mokili. Cela veut dire que Monique akozala na mokonzi ya sika wana esalemaki depuis le 18 mai 2010 kati na mboka Kinshasa. Ya mibale tozali kopesa bino sango ya mboka Lubumbashi dimanche passé le 23. Lubumbashi ezalaki encerclé na basoda kati na ba avenue nyoso bisika nyoso depuis 20h na butu ti presque na tongo batu bayebaki eloko nini tindaki ete basoda batonda na kati na avenue nyoso kasi lundi un jour après de ministre provincial et intérieur alekaki na télévision pona kopesa sango ete ezalaki parce que coup d'état elingaki esalema pe mingi bamituni balobi ete coup d'état kosalema na Lubumbashi ndenge nini alors que mokonzi ya mboka yango azali kati na mboka na Kinshasa. Kasi mituna ebele bandaki kotuna makati na population pe ba mususu balobi tango mususu ekoki kozala tentative ya sécession yonanga toyebi ete na 1960 après kozwa indépendance ndenge nini mboka na biso ekotaki kati na mobulu pe sécession katangese esalemaki bato baza komituna eske tolingi susu tokende na makambo ya lolenge wana te ou bien ezali partage ya mboka na biso ndenge banguna ya Congo balingi basala yango. Kasi lobamaki ete baike basoda bambolombolo bakangamaki mpona likambo wana tokoyeba suite na mikolo ezali koya. Information misatu toza na yango tolingi toyebisa bino ete le 23 dimanche kaka uti koleka na mboka Buturubia na mboka Alimbango pe na mboka Masamba kuna ezali à peu près na 250 km na nord ya Goma, entre Goma na Butembo, donc na nord Kivu. Kuna ville morte moko esalemaki batu basiliki makasi ba population balobi ete tomoni pasi. 122e brigade ya FARDC ezali ko continuer ko boma batu jour wana. Donc samedi passé ba utaki ko boma ndeko moko na kombo ya Katembo wana tamba bomaki population esilika ki makasi yango wana ba village misato toti kotanga kombo balobaki tokosala musala moko te en tout cas to fandi na bandaku ba mususu balobi tokende na balabala po ete to réclamer baya kolongolela biso pasi oyo banani congolais congolaise bakolongola pasi wana soki yona ngai te yango wana tozali kosenga à tout moment congolais la muga po ete soki obundeli mboka na yo te mutu mususu akoya kobundela yo te. Sango ya mine tozali na yango ezali ya groupement moko euti kosalema, donc groupe moko ebiangami na kombo ya CLP wana ezali Centre libéral et patriotique, ezali groupement moko esalemi na kati ya AMP. Yonanga toyebi ete AMP ezali alliance ya majorité présidentielle, batu oyo bazali ko soutenir mutu azali na mutu ya mboka kuna na mboka na biso to bengi Hippolyte Kanambe na komo na ya solo alias Joseph Kabila. Batu baza ko soutenir ye ezala kati na Sénat, ezala kati na Parlement, bandeko wana baike kati na bango balobi te misala ndenge ezali kotambola ezali malamu te. Ça fait à peu près 36 mois depuis l'Obama que décentralisation ya mboka na biso ekosalema. Cela veut dire que au lieu de 11 provinces autozaka nango, et l'Obama qui il faut ezala 26 provinces, mais misala wana ezali kokende liboso te pona nini balobi ete ezali botaou ya gouvernement ya Adolphe Muzitu, balobi ete ye moko te na président de la République bazali kosala eloko moko te. Yango wana CLP, Centre libéral et patriotique, oyo kambami na batu lokola Olivier Kamitatu na lingomba na ye ya force du renouveau, na Modeste Bahati oyo azali moko ya ba indépendant, pe José Endundo Bononge oyo azali mokonzi ya ba chrétien démocrate fédéraliste. Oyo wana nde batu oyo bazali kokamba lingomba oyo ya CLP. Kasi lingomba ya CLP yango ezali kaka na kati ya majorité, alliance de la majorité présidentielle. Alors bango balobi ete ezali pasi mingi po ete mboka na biso ezali kotambola malamu te. Na yango baye ko rejoindre ba député mususu oyo basalaki motion ya censure kati na parlement, balobaki ete gouvernement ya Adolphe Muzito ezali kosala musala ndenge sengeli te. Raison pour laquelle motion de censure wana esalemaki, kasi toutaki kolanda semaine passée ba retiraki motion de censure wana po ete esengelaki nombre ba signature ezala ebele pe balobaki ete bakozongisa yango na semaine oyo. Eloko nini ba député ya mboka Congo bazali ko reprocher epai ya Adolphe Muzito oyo azali premier ministre pe Hippolyte Kanambe alias Joseph Kabila oyo azali président mboka Congo, balobi ete ya solo penza misala ezali kosalema te na gouvernement po ete kimia pe sécurité kati na mboka ezali te. Pona ko vérifier yango toki kotala même na province ya oriental na Otuele, na Ituri, na Nord Kivu pe na Sud Kivu, ba tuerie, cela veut dire ko boma batu, ba viol, ba disparition ezali ko continuer pe yango ezali ko amener nini ba population bazali ko longwa na ba village na bango pona ko banga makambo wana bazali ko se retrouver soit libanda na banzela pe bisika mususu nyoso wana ezali gouvernement de sengela kiete etala makambo nyoso wana yango te ba député na balobi ete malgré ba accord ezali ki signé entre gouvernement ya mboka na biso Congo pe gouvernement ya Rwanda na gouvernement ya Uganda, malgré makambo nyoso balobaki wana eloko moko ezali ko salema te. Botau eleki mingi kati na bandeko mibale oyo Adolphe Muzito pe Joseph Kabila oyo toyebi na kombo ya Hippolyte Kanambe. Tepe Mazembe ezali ekipe na biso ya Katanga ya Lubumbashi bakendeki kobeta match ya football na Kigali semaine passée, ezalaki samedi na tournoi oyo ebongisamaki na Paul Kagame azali président ya Rwanda. Babetaki match na équipe ya APR. Na 34 minutes APR atiaki mokele moko, kasi 3 minutes après arbitre aboyaki bia égalisation ya équipe ya Mazembe. Putu oyo azali moko ya ba joueur ya Mazembe pe capitaine na bango akutanaki akendeki mbangu ko senga epai ya arbitre ete a validé biwana parce que moko ya ba joueur ya APR azalaki na kati ya poto pona ko couvrir gardien na bango, kasi arbitre andimaki te apesaki capitaine ya Mazembe carte rouge. Yango nde salaki ete ba joueur ya Mazembe basilika basala neti balongwa kati na terrain, kasi entraîneur ya Mazembe asengaki bango bazonga kati na terrain. Na tango wana match esalaki neti kosila, kasi ba joueur ya Mazembe ndeko na ngai Congolais makambo kokamwa bamonaki mbula ya mabanga oyo ebandaki kokwela bango. Ba supporter ya équipe ya APR ya Rwanda babandaki ko bwakela bango mabanga, match esukaki en queue de poisson. Na kolongwa kati na terrain baki komona ete moko na bango na kombo ya Lusadisu abungaki, cela veut dire que il était enlevé. Basalaki nyoso pour que bakoka kozwa ndeko wana Lusadisu bazwaki ete basinga to téléphone elelaki ti baki kozongisa joueur Lusadisu vraiment avec retard na butu. Likambo liso ko kamwa makasi ete ba autorité ya Rwanda basengaki na équipe ya Mazembe bakoka kotanela tongo sur le sol rwandais te. Bakoye kosala ndenge nini alors que ezalaki déjà na butu, bakendeki mbangu na aéroport. Nzambe alalaka te, avion moko ezalaki wana en destination ya Nairobi na Kenya. Yango nde bazwaki bakomaki na Kenya na butu na 3h du matin, kuna nde bazwa correspondance pour ete bazwa avion tina mboka Kinshasa, bakomaki dimanche passé le 23 na Kinshasa. Tozali ko fungola mato ya ba Congolais na koyebisa bino ete tala leloyo alors que bandeko oyo toyambaki malamu kati na mboka na biso oyo bamonisi biso pasi oyo ti leloyo baza kokamba mboka na biso likambo nini basali mpona bajoueur oyo baki kobeta match oyo kutu baza na raison na ndenge joueur moko capitaine na bango abandaki kokende kosenga na bosembo epai ya arbitre ete tala moninga mosusu azalaki kuna na kati ya poto ezali hors jeu te mais bapesi carte rouge babwakili bango mabanga babengani bango na baautorité ya mboka Rwanda balobi balala te na Rwanda ntongo etanela bango te bongo sikoyo yokola bo mokolo makambo oyo ekochange okende wapi na Kigali na Ruengeri toyebi te kasi ezali pasi mingi ekomi ngonga yo na ngai tokanisa malamu tolingi toyebisa bino ete bitumba oyo tokolonga yango na modele nyonso yo na ngai tokelamaki na Nzambe tozali mpe na oyo tobengi pastoral lingomba munene oyo ezali kosengisa banganga Nzambe kati na mboka oyo ya UK kasi awa na Londres le 29 mai ekozala samedi basengi na biso nyonso toya kobondela Nzambe kotia maboko likolo kosenga epai na Nzambe ndenge bana Israel basengaka na Nzambe balobi ete pasi eleki mpe Nzambe alobaki na kolongola bino kati na bombo oyo yango wana non seulement banganga Nzambe mais biso nyonso bakristu nyonso bato nyonso boya tokoka kobondela Nzambe mpona likambo oyo etali Congo mpona basouffrance nyonso toza komona na mboka Congo. Le 30 juin 2010 ezali na ndeko na biso Mukendi Albert ensemble na babundeli Congo kati na mboka UK bazali koorganize marche moko ya munene mpona koloba ete biso tozwa nanu lipanda te ezala économiquement ezala spirituellement ezala politiquement ezala même na sport tala ndenge bauti kobengana bana na biso babeti ndembo na Rwanda. Cela veut dire que lipanda penza nanu tozwa yango te na yango le 30 toza na marche munene na Victoria Coach Station ti na ambassade ya Belgique. Donc yo na ngai tozanga te kati na marche munene wana tokosala ya revendication ya liberté na biso to lipanda pote tozwa yango nanu tolingaki pe to yebisa population na biso na mboka Londres ete moko ya basali na Nzambe na kombo ya Roger Vimbudulu autaki ko perdre mwasi na ye na semaine oyo koleka azali ko remercier bandeko mingi oyo bazali koleka epai na ye mpona kokonsole ye kasi matanga esili nanu te semaine prochaine tokopesa bino programme ya oyo etali enterrement pe fin ya matanga kasi ekozala malamu mingi yo nanu oleki kuna te na cadre ya bolingo na kati ya communauté na biso koleka kokonsole moninga na biso oyo aperdaki mama Bijou ndenge yo na ngai tolandaki na bilili pe ba émission mosusu. Merci. Chaque vendredi à partir de 18h30 na Eagle TV en collaboration avec JGK Connections UK oyo ekobanda kosalema na Uk-Congo Voice. Merci mingi. Bye.
Merci mingi. Équipe technique nyonso epesi bino mbote boko découvrir biso mingi na mambaleza koya matondo. Bye.
Congo bokomona pamba lobi bokolula yango Congo ya Afrika Congo okaya kitoko Congo ya batu mayele Congo bakobikisa yo makoko